Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sorry, thought you guys were all quicker. Yeah, roll call.
You got a date or something?
Okay, Member Bolin? Roll call.
Here.
Member Hill?
Here.
Member Norma Pole Mohammed?
Here.
Member Nita Verdugo London?
Here.
And Member Williams?
Here.
We have a quorum. Bill Pertzborn, I think, indicated that he would be here. He may show up here any minute, but we have a quorum.
All right. All right, approval of minutes from May 6, 2015.
I'd like to make a correction. My last name is spelled, it's an extra L there. I need to correct that.
Extra L.
It's only one.
And you see it where? I'm sorry.
Oh.
Oh, it's only one L.
Yes.
I'm sorry, where's that
The
at?
description on top. So those present for roll call.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay, we'll make that correction.
Thank you.
Do you have a motion?
Move we accept the minutes of the meeting.
Or a second?
Second.
Oh, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Old business, we don't have any old business, so let's go on to new business. First item is Cool PZ 15-04-03, a rezoning request initiated by the City of Coolidge for approximately 161 acres of land located near the intersection of Story Road and Fast Track Road, which was previously zoned general rural, changing the zoning to agricultural.
Okay, thank you. As you mentioned, this is a request that was initiated by the City of Coolidge. It is 161 acres, as you can see on the exhibit. It's located on the northwest corner of Fast Track Road and Story Road. 161 acres that was previously in the city, in the county, Pinal County, with a zoning designation of general rural. The property was annexed in 2010, August of 2010, and I'm not sure why, but since that time we've investigated the zoning and on this property, and when it was annexed, it was not zoned subsequently to reflect a comparable zoning, and I directed Tim and our staff. We looked at this and felt that it would be appropriate to give it the proper zoning. So we initiated this request to change the zoning from general rural, which is what it was immediately prior to the annexation, to ag immediately prior to the annexation, to general rural, which I've got that backwards. General rural to ag, which is basically the comparable zoning, taking it from the county zoning, which allowed agricultural uses, applying a city zoning that allows agricultural uses, similar densities, very comparable in zoning. It's just a different title, zoning title versus a county title for the zoning of the property. Generally, this is done within the first 6 months of the annexation. I'm not really sure why this didn't occur, but it's something that I found and felt that it would be appropriate to put the proper zoning designation on this property. Otherwise, it doesn't have a zoning.
Isn't agricultural just for farming? Isn't that what it's for?
No, you can have single-family homes on large lots, typically an acre, which is what we allow in our current zoning district as well.
Okay.
It does allow for agricultural farming. You can have animals. You can basically do all the things you would typically find in a rural ranchette agricultural setting.
And what would be zoning for just like a farm, you know, like,
Agricultural, same thing, ag.
okay,
hmm Typically, you can have a farm, you know, that we're farming cotton. They might have other dwellings on the farmland, including
residents.
the residents, but sometimes they don't include residents. But all those uses are allowed in this zoning district.
And how many acres does it have to be per parcel or?
A minimum of 1 acre for a single-family home, correct?
So KLC Ranches is considered a ag?
Well, you know, I think that the zoning, I'm not sure what the zoning on that is. Is it ag or did they, PAD? I'd have to research that. I'm not prepared to answer that tonight, but do you know what the zoning is on?
PAD. The stuff out by Attaway Road and Buckeye Inn, all those acre and quarter houses out there,
Yeah.
those are all zoned ag.
Oh, those are all zoned ag? Okay.
Yeah, you know, generally, this is the appropriate, most comparable zoning that what the county had. That's what we try to do when we annex, is provide zoning that is consistent or comparable to what the county had in place. We don't want to take something away or a zoning or a land use right away from the property owners. We're just trying to apply city zoning on property that didn't get city zoned.
Then ag is actually cheaper under taxes then, right?
Well, you know, the zoning doesn't really affect the taxes as much as the use of the property. If it's used for agricultural purposes, then generally they have a lower tax rate. But if it's, you know, if it's in an agricultural zoning district, but it's broken up into 1 acre semi-custom home sites, it could be taxed not as ag. So the zoning doesn't affect the taxation as much as the use of the property.
Okay.
This is a public hearing. We did send out notices to property owners within this area, indicating them of the city's intentions. And I'm not aware of any phone calls. I didn't receive any on this request. Tim, did you receive any that you know of on this particular request? Okay. So that's our desire tonight, is to ask you to forward a favorable recommendation to the city council to rezone the property from general rural, which had a prior county zoning, to agricultural, which is the city's comparable zoning. Be happy to answer any more questions that you have.
Is there anyone out of the public that would like to make a comment? Yes. If you'd like to come up to the podium, please, ma'am, state your name. Right up here to the,
Okay,
hello, your name, please.
Angela Aguirre Acuna.
Hello, Miss Acuna. Yes.
I want to know what you people are planning to build in front of my home
And your home is where?
on Cleck Road by the highway.
On Cleck Road by the highway.
Yes.
Is it by 87? Is that what you're?
Oh, this is a different thing.
Oh, is this the next case, ma'am?
It's the next case. It doesn't have anything to do with this one right now.
Well, I'm going to tell you anyway.
Ca-
See where Cleck Road is right there?
Yes.
Okay. This is the tracks,
Correct?
and the highway's on this side. And the second property off the highway is right here, on Cleck Road. And that's where he lives, too, farther down by the tracks. So you're gonna build all this stuff right here in front of my house, and what is it that you're gonna build? You're building too, so we're making African Americans. We're Americans too. I guess my German's coming out.
If
Could
May I-
you answer that,
Yes, I
Rick? or-
can. In fact, you know, as the commission has expressed, the next item on the agenda is the one that's closer to your property. This property is further away, but I would like to answer your
That
question.
is right in front of my property, that darker thing right there,
Okay,
on Cleck Road.
well, yeah, and I
Just
think,
across my home is where they're gonna build all that stuff.
Well, first of all, there's no one going to build anything with this request. This is simply a rezoning request.
Uh-huh.
This property was annexed into the city limits in
Okay.
2010. All we're doing, when we annex property into the city limits, we're required by law to apply a city zoning designation for the property. And all we're doing is, as a city, rezoning the property inside the city limits comparable to what it was zoned in the county, which is for agricultural uses, which can include single-family homes on 1 acre lots, so very low density. But no one is making a request this evening to build anything on this property. In fact, if someone wanted to come in and pull a permit on this property, we would have to look at the zoning and tell them what they can and cannot do on the property based on the zoning that's on the property. Tonight's decision is to apply that zoning on the property that would tell them you can put single-family homes on your property on at least a minimum of a 1 acre site. No commercial, no industrial.
Well, that's what I
No.
was worried about, excuse me.
Okay.
That they would try to build other stuff like they have on the other side, on Randolph Road. That's killing us off.
Are you talking about, what? I'm not sure what you're talking about there.
On the other side is Stinger. Because we've never been incorporated. We're not incorporated with nobody. Nobody wants us.
You're in the county.
Yeah.
So are you talking about an industry that's creating some odors or?
Yes.
Okay.
He's the one that got everything for us.
I'm sorry?
He's the one that has all the stuff that's going on.
Okay.
So, Ms. Acuna?
Yes.
So what we're discussing in this issue right now, and we'll get to your issue, is the site where we've got the dotted lines. So if we could, we're going to continue with this one and close this one out and then continue with the other ones. And then we could discuss, if you needed to further, the issue with the upcoming cases.
Okay, because there's been a while now that they're trying to get rid of us, of Randolph. And I'm not acting up or being funny or whatever, but that's what they've been trying to do to us.
And I hear you, and I
Thanks to your
understand.
mayor. He's the one that, they've always wanted to get us out because we were Mexicans and African Americans that lived there. And most of them are gone. So there's a few of us, and I'm not leaving anywhere. I've been there for 61 years.
Well, it certainly is your home.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely. And I hear you. Let me end this issue here, and then we'll continue on with the issue. But you're not, I am listening to what you're saying. But I just don't think that this particular issue is affecting you at all right away. We're just zoning it differently. It went from being a county land to Coolidge land, if you will, and now we have to give it a designation.
Okay.
Okay?
And what are we supposed to be? Right there in Randolph. Nobody wants us.
Well, do you have an answer to that, Rick?
Well, I'd like to spend some time, if you'd like to come into my office, I'd love to spend some time talking to you, or I could come out to your home. Your home, as you're describing it to me, is not inside the city limits of Coolidge.
No.
So you're
They
under
went all around us.
you're under the jurisdiction of Pinal County.
Yes.
Their zoning,
They zoned everything around us.
we annexed, I think the city annexed around you,
Yes.
probably because when we do annexations, we have to have the consent of property owners in order to annex property. Most likely it was felt that we wouldn't obtain enough consent in your area to make an annexation happen. But I can talk to you more at home if you'd like, or at my office, whichever you'd like to do.
Okay.
Okay? And I can give you a card or my number here right after the meeting. Okay?
Okay.
Look forward to talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just feel like we don't even belong here.
Oh,
Yeah, you do. Everybody
course you
belongs
do.
here.
We don't have no rights.
Yes, you do. We all do. Is there anyone else that'd like to make a comment, but just regarding this issue, Cool PZ 15-04-03?
I'd like to make a motion to accept it as it's
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passed. All right, second issue tonight, it's Cool PZ 15-04-04, a rezoning request initiated by the City of Coolidge for approximately 124 acres of land located near the intersection of Highway 87 and Kleck Road, which was previously zoned General Rural, changing the zoning to General Industrial.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. The request, as you mentioned, is again a rezoning request that's being initiated by the City of Coolidge for another 124 acres of property located near the intersection of Highway 87 and Kleck Road. I think this may be the property that's closer to the home that you're residing in there in the Randolph area. The proposal before you this evening would be to change the zoning on this property from a county designation of general rural, which is what it was zoned immediately prior to the annexation, which also occurred in 2010. We're proposing to change the zoning on this property to conform with the city's general plan, which was approved by the voters last year. The general plan land use policy figure for this property indicates that that property is best suited for industrial. All along the rail corridor, the Highway 87 and the Union Pacific Rail Corridor, you can see on this exhibit, the land in the purple is designated for industrial uses. That's not probably consistent with some of the homes that are in the area, like she's expressing a concern about. But we do have a precedence for other industrial uses in this area with the Stinger Bridge and Iron, with TransCanada, with the Western Emulsions, with there's another facility further south, Heritage Environmental. We've annexed this whole corridor all the way down to within 4.5 miles of Interstate 10. And even further south, we have a lot of industrial uses that are planned for the future along this important employment corridor. This doesn't change your right to continue to use your property the way you've been using it, and you live there and in your home. But it would allow somebody the right to build an industrial use on this property across from your home on the south side of Kleck, within this 124-acre piece of property. I'm not sure how you feel about that, but it is, when we do rezone property, we have to rezone consistent with the city's general plan, which designates this property for industrial uses. That is our recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission, that we recommend a I2 heavy industrial or general industrial zoning for this property, and that recommendation be forwarded to the City Council for approval, consistent with the general plan.
Madam Chairman, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
If we approve this and make this industrial too, and the area that these people, I believe, are living in has got industrial 2 behind them, based on that map right there, and this will be the same, and then below them they have industrial 2. So a manufacturing facility or the railroad switching yard could legally go into that I2 area? Would that be true?
That's correct.
And so these families that have been living in Randolph for 60, 70 years, 60 at least that I'm aware of, but 60 or 70 years, could have any kind of thing like a railroad switching yard literally directly behind them, and maybe they would fill in some of the GR thing that is between the general rural brown area there. That could also turn into I2. Thank you, Tim. And so that whole thing could become a giant railroad switching yard with a bunch of homes along the highway. Would that be legally true?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The answer is yes. If we rezone the property to I2 heavy industrial, as the general plan update recommended, that is true. That could happen.
And there's no buffer zone to protect these people so they don't have literally 150 feet from their house, 200 feet from their house, something that makes a lot of noise.
Well, there's something that makes a lot of noise going by their house right now, and that's a railroad and a train. I mean, that does go by there
But
pretty
they're used to
often.
that noise because it's been going on forever. But
No,
this-
you're right. There's no typical buffer standard in our zoning code other than setbacks, which are required. If we have a industrial use adjoining a residential use, there's a minimum setback, but it's not in the hundreds of feet. It's in the less than 50 feet or whatever. So it's not significant. But those are those kinds of issues we would tend to try to address at the time of a site plan review. This is the zoning. That doesn't mean that somebody can come in tomorrow and start building on a property without going through a site plan review process. During that site plan review process, we may very well say, you know, there's some sensitivity here on the property immediately adjoining this site. We'd like you to consider your retention area and landscaped area, maybe along Kleck Road, to provide that buffer that you're looking for. Those requirements or standards are imposed on site plan review processes. So they're but we're not at that point in time where we're looking at a site plan. This is merely changing the zoning on the property to the designation that was approved by the voters on this plan when the general plan was approved.
But, okay, potentially though, a large developer could come in and the site plan is going to be under the approval of the Growth Management Department or the Planning and Zoning and the Growth Management and the City Council.
Major site plan reviews are reviewed and approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
So the Planning and Zoning Commission makes the decision on as far as landscaping and other things, to protect
Correct.
the landholders that are close by.
That's correct. So before the property develops, you take any site that has never been developed like this, and someone comes in with a development proposal, they have to go through a major site plan review process. At that point in time, we begin to specifically address the concerns that they may have. It won't address, if it's rezoned, it won't address the fact that you basically are going to allow them to do an industrial activity on this property. But by granting this zoning, you're not granting them the right to build an industrial structure right up against Kleck Road. You're going to determine that through the site plan review process, through the development plan review process. Does that make sense?
Well, doesn't our zoning restrictions require a certain amount of buffer on?
Only it requires setbacks. Now, I mentioned earlier that when you look at the setbacks, there's the minimum setbacks are specified. But when we get into an environment like we're in here tonight, and we have property owners that come to express some concerns, and they'll be notified as well if and when this property develops, they express concerns to the commission about where this industrial activity is occurring on the site. And that's when you begin to address issues like, well, we need retention. Let's put the retention up there on the front to act as a buffer. Let's put the parking area, landscaping, perhaps screening walls, anything that produces noise, odors, glares, or anything that would potentially impact these property owners even more so, requires a conditional use permit as well. The zoning doesn't just allow those uses. You have to have a conditional use permit to have those types of uses locate on this property.
But if you change it from general rural or ag to this, it's much easier for a industrial developer to come in and get the approval because it's now zoned.
That's
industrial. Is that
absolutely correct. Yeah, if we didn't zone this property tonight, it really actually doesn't have zoning technically today. And so technically, I'm not an attorney here, but technically with no zoning, someone can come in here today and say, I'll do anything I want on that property. You don't have any zoning for it.
Okay. But if we rezone it, if Stinger suddenly needed to pick up their business and move it a mile, which is about what it is, about a mile, down the road, they could set up exactly what they're setting up now on this property.
Do a major site plan review process, that is correct.
But there's probably no real reason why they couldn't be allowed to do it.
Well, no, I think the reason why there would be no reason they wouldn't be able to do it is because this community, through the general plan process, felt that this area, in proximity to the railroad and the highway, with the other industries that are already there, would be an appropriate location for industrial development. And I understand the concerns by some citizens that own homes in the area. But, it doesn't prevent them from continuing to have those homes. It doesn't prevent us from trying to do things to mitigate the impacts of those industrial uses as they come in and plan those sites.
Tim, do you know how far the I-2 goes south from what we can see on the screen? Does it stop at whatever the next road is? And I think stops at Heritage? No, it goes the other side of Heritage. Heritage
Goes
is
down Story.
is on north side of Story. Oh, I see it on my map. I can see it goes down maybe a quarter of a mile or a half mile down. Okay.
If you go back to the general plan exhibit, though, it doesn't go much further south there either. So everything in purple there, if someone wanted to come in and rezone it.
The zoning exhibit we have in our paperwork shows it shows more of the thing, and it's got more of the general rural south of where the I-2 now exists. So we're just lengthening another half mile of the I-2 along 87 at this point. It appears, or somewhere in that neighborhood.
It stops right there.
There we go.
Okay.
Stops a half mile south of Story Road.
Okay, that's the end of my questions.
We are open to the public, so if you'd like to come and make a comment, please state your name at the podium. Thank you.
Good evening, Board. I appreciate it. My name is Jeff Jordan. I received a notice from the city, right, regarding the zoning change. I have been there for 54 years. Prior to that, my parents were there. They were there in Randolph in the 40s. I'm here today basically to express my concerns. And I have several things that I want to talk to this board about. Ultimately, you make the decision. But I can tell you some stories, and then ultimately, again, it's your decision. Okay. I'm not opposed to jobs, and I'm not opposed to development and growth. I'm not. I've been here since 1960. Right? I've seen Coolidge boom, and I've seen it up and down, and lately it's been more down. So jobs are needed, economic development is needed, growth is needed. However, for us who have been living in Randolph, Arizona, for the amount of time that we have, it has been an extreme, difficult, and an embarrassing situation for county officials and city officials from my point of view. I'm not here to criticize. I'm only telling you the truth. We have lived in a system where we had Sunbelt, and now we have a company that is Western Emotions. Western Emotions are basically running us out of our homes. With the fumes and the odors and the things that are happening there, I have known several families in that area that literally, when they process, they literally leave their homes and their children. There's people who go and sleep with masks over their faces. This has been going on for about 8 or 9 months. We have petitioned more and more officials higher up about these incidents and these occurrences that are happening in our community. I don't care if people run their business. What I care about, if someone is doing harm to you or to me, that's it. If you can run your business and conduct yourselves in a way that's professional, go ahead and do it. I don't care if you're right across the street from me. That's fine. I'm here to encourage this board to leave it as general rule until these issues are resolved with the county, with the state, and the federal level, with this company, because those who have been out there in our community have not produced. They have made our lives miserable. These other individuals that are here, they can express that same concern. We were so upset and so irate about some of the things that was happening in the community. We filed a petition with Pinal County government regarding Western Emotions. We also send this to DEQ in Phoenix. We send this to the Environmental Protection Agency, demanding that they provide us some relief and help. They are the regulatory agency that was supposed to protect our air, right, and our health in this area, and they have not done it. I'm not opposed to jobs. I'll tell you that again, I am not. We need jobs, we need economic development and growth, but we have to be selective about what we do in our area, in particular when it impacts people in the community. We have elders, we have children, we have newborn, we have elders that are 80, 91 years old that are literally locking themselves in their house because they don't want to smell those fumes and odors that are so bad. And it has gotten worse. The county right now is working with Western Emotions to try and reduce those odors and find the problems within. They are aggressively working with that, and we have demanded they do something about it because by law, they are to protect our health and our well-being, and it hasn't been happening. We don't know what the effects have caused us or anything else. In relation to this, that's what I am requesting, that we do not change this zoning, that we leave this zoning until these issues are resolved within our community of Randolph, Arizona. I appreciate you listening to me. I'm not here to be negative. I'm only expressing the truth and what has been going on in my community for over 20 years. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank
Any
you, Mr.
questions?
So Western Emotion, that's under Pinal County?
You know, first of all, I would like to commend you for your remarks tonight. I think they were very well spoken, and you've done a tremendous job explaining the situation. I have also heard in recent months that I've heard of personally complaints that are coming from that facility and the odors, the people that are complaining about breathing problems and other concerns. You're absolutely correct in what you did. You know, the jurisdiction that is responsible for ensuring the air quality standards and adherence to the air quality rules is the Division of Air Quality at Pinal County. ADEQ was a good agency to address as well. We have no jurisdiction over that. Our air quality standards are monitored and governed by Pinal County Air Quality. I don't know the history of the Western Emulsions and Sunbelt Refinery prior to that. My guess, it was there before I got here, but my guess it was probably approved in the county and then subsequently annexed by the city. It has a history of, I'm not sure how long it's been there. And maybe you can tell me, is this a recent occurrence or is it something that's been going on for 20 years?
This has been going on. Prior to Western Emulsions, there was a company there that was called Sunbelt Refinery. You're more than welcome to request the information from Pinal County Air Quality, and you can read about the history of this and the petitions that even was sent back in the day, right? And so we have basically started this petition again, and you're more than welcome to have this copy, right? And so all we have basically simply asked is that you control your odors, your emissions from coming into our neighborhood. That's all we've asked, nothing else. Run your business, make your money, create jobs, and that is it, nothing more. But that has not been taking place. And so, to answer your question, it was Sunbelt Refinery. Then it came to Western Emulsions, and all of these companies have made promises. We can be better, we can improve, we can do this, we can make this work for jobs and economic development. But for those that are of us in the area, we see totally the opposite. It hasn't been taking place. The fumes are worse. There's a lady that I've been knowing since I was a little boy. Her name is Mandy Moore, right? Mrs. Moore leaves her house 4 times a week because of those fumes. She stays in Phoenix with her granddaughter 4 times a week. There's a 91-year-old gentleman that lives right behind Stinger. His wife is 84. They literally have duct taped themselves into their house. They don't even come out in the evenings because of the odors are so bad. And individuals don't even know that this is taking place in our community to this day. And that's the reason why I am encouraging this board not to rezone this until these issues are addressed and solved from within the city, within the county, the state, and the federal level so that we can live in peace. That's all we ask. I personally have a son in Texas. He has 2 children. I don't encourage him and his wife and my grandkids to come to my house. I don't, because of this situation.
Tim, could you show me on the map where this Western Emulsions is? It's
Right on
up there.
Randolph Road.
We're talking about the old bulk plant that was Western or Sun Belt Refinery, which is east of the railroad track and adjacent to Randolph Road.
Correct.
So it is about a mile from where we are talking about this particular annexation.
It's not annexed, this rezoning, yes, this rezoning.
About a mile.
It's about a mile, what you're talking about. Let me, if I may, can I, to not act on this rezoning tonight isn't going to solve the problem that you're talking about. The rezoning only it would apply industrial to a property, but it doesn't grant anyone to go in there and build another Western Emulsions. It just puts zoning on the property, and as I stated before, when you're in a heavy industrial zoning district, if you have any type of use that will contribute odors, glares, noise, vibrations, and those things that can be potentially offensive to a residential area, such as yours, they would have to go through a conditional use permit approval, in addition to their site plan review process. And with your concerns being raised, I share your concerns. I wouldn't want to live in an area where you've got that kind of odor. If you were there first and someone came in and the odors were as bad as they are, I don't think I would want to live there either.
Yeah.
Perhaps there are some control technologies, as you've indicated. You're not necessarily concerned about economic development and growth and jobs, but they have a responsibility to apply the best available control technology to minimize the impacts to the area. And there are many ways that can be done. I'm not sure how those systems can be in place for the Western Emulsions, but that's something that Pinal County Air Quality has to review and work with them on. I think those local city officials should, even myself, should go out there and have a conversation with these individuals, perhaps with some of you. I would like to go out there even myself during these times when this is going on. I would love to have a phone call. I'll come out and give it the sniff test myself, and let's figure out what the situation is. But I don't think holding off on the zoning of this property is going to resolve that conflict. That conflict exists. It's existed for a number of years. Rezoning this property doesn't create another conflict. It just simply applies zoning that allows industrial uses in an area that recognizes it's an appropriate location for the jobs and the industries.
I can appreciate what you're saying, Mr. Miller. I really do. However, we've been told and played that tune for a lot of years. I've been out there for 54, right? And we've heard that same tune. We're going to make it better. And my comment earlier, we're going to make it better. And well, it hasn't gotten any better. It's gotten worse. And so that's the reason why I'm encouraging you to do that. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Mr. Williams.
They really don't do any refining out there anymore, do they? It's a holding tank, isn't it?
It is not. They have a processing that they do. And I think that's where the problem is coming from, is when they actually process or cure the asphalt. They actually do a processing with it. And see, and then this processing really didn't start or didn't occur until about 8 months ago. Prior to that, they were doing, as you're saying, they were holding asphalt, shipping it out, but now they're processing it in a way, and now this is where these odors and fumes are so heavy. And you know what's interesting to know? We complained so hard that on March 30th of this year, right, we had, Pinal County Air Quality was there. We had 2 officials from Arizona Department of Environmental come down, right, March 30th. They were a chemist of some sort, right? They come back and they basically said they didn't find anything. They find minute little things. 7 o'clock that evening, between 7 and 9, right, was the worst conditions that I have ever smelled in my community in 54 years, after the inspection was completed. What we are saying is there is something that these officials are missing, or somebody is conducting themselves in a way that they should not be. And that's what we are encouraging, is to say, hey, put on the brakes, let's stop, let's fix this issue before we keep rezoning and having these problematic issues in our area. And like he said, if you're going, I wouldn't want to live there. And people are already leaving. If you go in Randolph in certain places, there's people that got for sale signs in the property, right off of 87. That is not fair to us. It is unreal, it is immoral, and it is wrong to treat economically disadvantaged people in that fashion. It is. And one of the documents that I sent to the county and to EPA was this. I sent my son, right? My son, right? He served this nation. He was in Iraq, right? I risked my son's life to protect this community of ours. Not only our community, but Coolidge and everywhere else. And this is how we are treated? Is that fair? It is not. We have a right, the same as every other American, to breathe good quality air and to sleep at night and not to be leaving our homes at night. We have that right. We serve this nation as well as your families did, and members of Coolidge. And right now, we're not doing that. It isn't happening. I can only encourage you to say, hey, let's wait. Even though this gentleman, Mr. Miller, is saying it's not going to affect it, it does. We've heard that tune before. Mr. Bowler?
Yes.
Mr. Miller, is the Western Emulsions plant within the city limits or within county?
I believe that's within the city limits.
That is within city limits.
It was annexed.
Is,
Like it was developed in the county, but annexed following the development.
is it, I'm way over my head here. Is it legal for the city magistrate to put an injunction against them operating when they are creating noxious, unsafe conditions for the neighborhood?
I'm not a legal person either, and I wouldn't want to suggest that that would be the magistrate would be that individual. I think that that what we're talking about, if there was a violation of a zoning requirement, that would be, we would address that. The problem is it's this plant. What I'm having a little hard time understanding is that it sounds like you mentioned that this severe odor that is becoming especially offensive has only happened in the last 8 months. So they've done something out there.
That is correct.
So they've done something out there that their process has changed, that is becoming more offensive. And we need to get to the root of that problem to find out what that is, and whether that we can find a way to stop that from happening, or allow it to happen with the proper technologies that won't cause the concern or problem.
That's all.
And so
Mr. Miller, that's all we've ever
that
asked.
And so, without having this case tonight is
No, I
not about
understand.
that issue.
Yeah, I understand.
This case
but
is,
it does have to do with this issue, because what we're saying is that this has been happening right at this location, and then we want to rezone something for industry. There's a possibility that anything could happen there. So yeah, doing your plan review, doing all this other process, it could happen. I know that, and you know that.
Well,
they could build another
yeah.
plant, they could build a rail system, they could do anything once you rezone that.
Yeah.
It can happen. That is a potential.
there's no doubt, and I would not want to mislead you, that once it's rezoned, you can have industrial uses in that corridor, which is what the community recognized was the appropriate use for the area. I would like to get with you and find out what the problem is over there at Western Emulsions, and we'll deal with Pinal County air quality officials, myself, ADEQ officials. We'll find out what's going on over there that's creating this problem. and see what we can do to rectify that.
Mr. Jordan, did you make the city of Coolidge aware of what's going on in there?
Absolutely. I sent a letter to every city council member, every single one of them. I sent it to the mayor, to the vice mayor.
I'm
Right.
sorry, but I don't think that we were privy to that letter, if it was within
Yes.
the last 8
I
months.
sent, and
I know
I sent
city
it back to
council
him
is
in
di-
May, either May or, yes, it was in May. May 28th, to be exact, is when the letter was
And I'm
actually.
sure it went to city council, it just didn't
Yes,
come
it did.
to our commission, because unfortunately, this is the first time I'm hearing of it, and I just wonder, I've not heard anything from the city.
I've heard in meetings outside of City Hall that this is a problem. My suggestion to those individuals that were making expressing the concerns was that there is an agency that's responsible for monitoring and evaluating and
Yes.
enforcing compliance with air quality standards, and that is the Department of Air Quality, Pinal County.
Yes.
And ADQ. So we don't have the jurisdiction to enforce those rules and regulations as they do. That's why I need to get with them, find out what's going on.
Correct,
try
but
to
if they're
try-
doing
try to
something
resolve it.
that's incorrect within our zoning compliance, that's something that we should know about.
Well, if they started a process that wasn't there before,
Correct.
that is creating these problems, then I think we do need to know about it. We need to find out how we can stop that. They can't just start processes that automatically create a major conflict with surrounding property owners out there without having some kind of a review. And so I need to get more, I need to investigate more on this.
You're right, Mr. Miller, it is. And the Pinal County Air Quality, they have the jurisdiction. It's their responsibility. However, the company, it is within the Coolidge city limits. So it's kind of like, yeah, you're responsible for it, but it's in our jurisdiction. It's annexed in our area. So, but the city of Coolidge basically turned the jurisdiction over to the county through some means, right? And so the problem exists. It has been for a long time, even with this company now and even with the previous one. And all we're asking them is fix your problem and everybody will be happy. Be honest with you, I'm not this type of a person. I've always been a real low-key individual, never really said too much. But here's something that is extremely offensive. You can't even invite your own family over for dinner. You won't even have your own grandchildren over. That's something wrong with that process. There's something wrong.
Miller, one thing I would check, I know we're getting off the subject here, but if they've made a change there, are they violation of what their permit is valid for? Did they kind of leapfrog into something that they're not approved for?
You know, we're talking about I don't have, well, in the heavy industrial district, they allow, oil refineries and those kinds of things are allowed subject to a conditional use permit.
But do they have that use permit?
But this thing was not approved in the city. It was approved in the county. I'd have to do a lot of investigation to find out how it was approved. Because whatever is annexed into the city, if it doesn't meet our requirements, it's grandfathered. The use is grandfathered. But if this activity, as you're describing, is different today, and that different activity occurred since it was annexed, I would like to think, we need to have some conversations is what we need to do. We're really, I want to come out and, how often does this happen? Is it every day, every night, a certain time of the night? Can you tell me more specifically?
You know what, Rick? I'm going to tell you the truth. I do not stay at my home anymore because of this. I literally stay in Scottsdale with a friend because I don't stay there anymore. Mr. Rushing, Mr. Cunha, and several others, they're there every day. I had a conversation with Ms. Acuna coming over here this evening. She says it's about 4 or 5 times a week, sometimes more.
Is there a particular time of the day or a time frame or that this happens that I
Mr.
could?
Rushing, if you'd come to the podium.
I think you guys know my position, and
I appreciate
so
you voicing this concern tonight, even though I understand where you think where it's related to this issue, but I'm glad that you came and spoke out because really you've got to get it out there, and I'm not sure that a lot of us know what's even happening out there.
It's interesting. A lot of people don't know that it's happened. They don't have a clue, and it's been going on for a long time. It bothers me to see little kids walking around holding their face and their nose because this stuff is so bad.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan.
My name's Harvey Rushing. I'm a citizen out of Randolph also. And he was asking about the times. It happens all the time, but normally it happens after 5 p.m. and it goes on all through the night.
So if I would leave this meeting tonight and go over to your place after this meeting,
I tell you what, you give me a card or something, let me have in contact with you, you'll get tired of listening to me.
okay, I want to know, because I'd like to go out there and personally see it and observe it myself so I can talk on your behalf as I'm talking to Pinal County officials and everybody. I need to sense it
Because
myself.
my residence, I'm the closest residence to it. I'm probably not even half a mile from it.
Okay.
I'm the closest to it. And it's horrible. I got grandkids out there right now, and that's because my son has to work. I have to watch him.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to express their comments, concerns, or any discussion?
I just wanted to say one thing.
Yes, ma'am.
Up to the, yeah, this is being televised and recorded, so we have to have you go there.
And it's best that you speak into the microphone, and when you're recorded and when people watch it on Channel 11, they could hear you clearly.
Okay. And my boss today. Okay. The first thing, the reason I was worried about that is because what's happening was what he's saying about.
Okay.
Okay. My daughter lives on Martin Road, and they smell it all the way over there. And that's in Coolidge. You're incorporated. Do you live in Coolidge?
Yes, ma'am, of course
Yes.
I do. Mm-hmm.
Okay. They smell it way over there. And my son lives over there in those beautiful houses over there. They say that sometimes at night they can smell it.
What does it smell like? What type of odor?
Well, let me tell you the truth. You probably think I'm some stupid or crazy or whatever. I had a gas stove, and I took it out and I bought a new one. It cost me over $500 because I thought it was my stove. Then I figured out that it was that place over there that was making all that smell. And then, like, I live in a trailer, double wide, and all that smell, I could be outside and it smells, I can smell, it's pretty bad, but when I go inside, that smell goes under my trailer, and it's worse inside my house. I get real bad headaches. I have asthma, I have COPD, I'm diabetic, and I have to smell that because people are making money. We had problems with the Stinger, but they fixed their problems because we couldn't sleep at night because of all the noise that they made. But then they fixed it before that young man died. He was a good person, not because he's dead, because I knew him. And he had them working and not making noise after 10 o'clock so we could be able to sleep. But then it's this other stuff that's on Randolph Road. And I don't think it's fair to us or to anybody. Like I said, at Martin Road, they smell all of that. In Coolidge, a lot of people probably smell it, but they don't say nothing. So that's what we're worried about. That's why I was worried about that place that that's been annexed or whatever it's called. That's why I was worried, because whoever owns Coolidge can build something like that in front of my house. And what can I do? I'm just a poor old lady that doesn't have too much long to live.
Well, you're doing the right thing by being here today, expressing your feelings. It's exactly what we need. We need more citizens to come out and participate in meetings like this. And in other type of meetings, it's exactly what you should be doing. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. You better be glad I didn't bring my aunt because, oh my God.
So Rick, you said that this did not have it wasn't zoned anything.
In 2010, when it was annexed, there was no subsequent initial zoning applied to the property, correct?
But it says it was previously zoned GR
In the county.
in the county.
So when we annexed the property, the county no longer has jurisdiction over zoning.
Correct.
The state law says we have to apply zoning for the property. We would ordinarily zone it comparable to what the county has it zoned, like we did the last case.
Correct.
But in this case, because of the general plan update,
Correct.
the property is designated for industrial. And when you rezone property, you have to rezone it to conform with the general plan. And so our recommendation is to rezone it for industrial in conformance with the general plan land use policy figure. And I understand the concerns that are being expressed. And I have to say that, if someone wanted to come in and develop this for industrial uses, if you zone it for industrial, they have that right through a major site plan review process or a conditional use permit process if they're going to do something that could generate noise or odors or that kind of thing.
What if we held up a little bit and came back with like a C2, C3 zoning in the meantime until somebody buys property with a plan, and then we deal with it at that time?
I wouldn't do that. Again, this property owner that we've had conversation with understands that the property is designated for industrial uses, and I think we've had that conversation. Tim, did you meet with that property owner? And would like his property zoned to conform with the general plan.
Madam Chairwoman?
Yes.
This would be considered, I-2 would be considered probably the best and highest use for this property?
When you look at the location, with the railroad and the Highway 87, albeit, we have a conflict with the residential area, which has been there a lot longer than the industrial area. I understand that. You have a recent history where industrial uses have been going in out there. And so that's created a conflict that we need to try to address and minimize to whatever degree we can. But this area is tending towards industrial uses and activities, which would be the highest and best use for this property on the railroad and Highway 87.
What is the land across the street from this zone, which is known as the Arizona Training Program, I believe, is the official title?
General rural.
That's general rural.
You can see it on this zoning exhibit.
Yeah, I just wanted to be sure that that was correct. Unfortunately, I think this probably is the highest and best use for this property, and that is what it should be zoned. And yes, we're going to have to hope that the city, at the time that the buyer comes in and wants to develop it, does have some protections put in for the citizens of Randolph. But to zone this, to keep this, or to rezone it general agricultural is not going to be the use that land's put to. It has never been agricultural property, and it's not going to be in the future.
If I could expand on that again, even a little more, Randolph has been there a lot of years. That residential subdivision has been there, and those houses are quite old, and I think many of you said that it's been there 50, 60, 70 years, or maybe longer.
It's been there since the 1940s.
Yeah, and so not likely today that you'll find a developer that's going to build another similar residential development between the railroad track and Highway 87 here either. So agricultural, not likely. Residential, like they have and that they enjoy and have enjoyed for many years, not likely. So the highest and best use probably is the industrial, with proper precautions, as you've indicated, to mitigate some of the concerns that they're expressing. I want to, and I will commit to you, to go and try to find out what's causing the problems that are creating the issues today. I'm going to have to rely on the agency that enforces those rules. However, I can't enforce those rules. That's going to be another jurisdiction. Unless...
But we could certainly push a little.
Yeah, we can do that, absolutely.
Madam Chairwoman?
Yes.
I'd I'd like to make a motion that we approve Cool PZ 15-04-04.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes.
Just for the members of the audience here tonight, the Planning and Zoning Commission is a recommending body on these cases. Their decision on this is not final, as I think one of you said. They have the final decision. No, they recommend the rezoning approval to the city council. And that would be the next step, is for this to go to the city council for their approval.
Third issue tonight, it's Cool PZ 15-04-05, a rezoning request initiated by the city of Coolidge for approximately 37 acres of land located near the intersection of 87 and Erica Road, which is currently zoned light industrial and warehouse, I-1, changing the zoning to general industrial as I-2.
Thank you. This property is part of an active annexation that's currently in the works. The city of Coolidge filed an annexation petition, which we're calling the Highway 87 frontage annexation. And this small property is included within that annexation area. We're talking about 37 acres of land, as you've mentioned, at the northeast corner of Erica Road and Highway 87. I think at the last Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, the commission did recommend approval of a rezoning of the 177 acres lying south of this property to industrial. So talking with this property owner, who's part of the annexation, he'd indicated a desire to have his property also rezoned to heavy industrial from CI1, which is light industrial in the county. So if we're successful on this annexation, which I believe we will be, then during that annexation discussion, when the council, if they should approve the annexation ordinance, they would then subsequently approve the zoning for this, which you already did recommend to go to industrial, and then they would also entertain whatever recommendation you have tonight on this piece, which is also industrial. Again, general plan update shows this whole area for industrial. This is the area where we're going to eventually, hopefully, see the inland port Arizona that's going to be developed on the city of Mesa property by the Pinal Land Holding Group. They have lots of industrial property in here. They're going to continue to farm it until such time that someone comes in and entertains a development for industrial uses. So our recommendation tonight would be to rezone this from County CI1, which is light industry and warehousing, to general industrial I2, consistent with the city's general plan update. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about that.
Did you get your blessing from Eloy?
No.
Just being smart. Any questions?
It's just consistent with what we've been doing.
Same, this is another, the difference with this one is we're doing it when we're supposed to do it.
Yeah,
We're doing it with the annexation. The other ones is, we're kind of behind the eight ball. We're way behind schedule on the others. For whatever reason, I can't answer, but we need to get those properties zoned. This one, we're doing it correctly at the time of annexation, which is the appropriate time to do it.
I'll make a motion to approve Cool PZ 150405.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Let's review.
You ready?
Yep.
Okay, commission members, last month we had some initial conversations about the recreational vehicle parking requirements in the city's zoning code. And as you recall, we've had some citizens express concern about the way our current codes are written. That concern was expressed at the city council meeting, and the city council directed staff to begin to have a dialogue with the Planning and Zoning Commission about possible amendments to the code. Since our last conversation, we've done some investigations on some of the surrounding cities and what their code requires. And to be truthful, the codes are very comparable to ours. All of the surrounding communities have similar requirements in their code to ours, which basically says you cannot park a recreational vehicle in front of the front building line of a house. You can't park it on the corner side. And I think we had some conversation last week whether or not they're even allowed on the interior side. And I think we kind of believed after the discussion last week that the only place that our current code allows you to park a recreational vehicle is in the rear yard of your house. So we've been looking at some possible amendments that we'd like to bring to your attention tonight. And I think that this will provide some relief to the way the code is currently written, but will still protect the integrity of the ordinance, which is to prevent the over-concentration of these larger vehicles in front yards, which would detract from the image down the street. First of all, we're suggesting that instead of saying that the RV must be parked behind the front building line of the house, we're proposing to make the change that the RV must be parked behind the minimum front setback line. So let me give you an illustration there. Typical residential front yard setback is 20-foot minimum. If you have a house that's sitting 80 feet back, I don't see any reason why someone shouldn't be able to park an RV in front of their house, but not within that front required 20-foot setback. So rather than saying no RVs in front of your house, we say no RVs inside that front 20-foot setback. So if you're fortunate enough to have a house that's plenty distance back, you can probably have one in the front yard. If your house is built on the front yard setback line, 20 foot away from the property line, then you wouldn't be able to park one in the front yard. Okay? That's number one. Second thing we thought about was that we really still feel that you must have a lot that has a principal structure on it in order to park RV on it. So we don't want people parking recreational vehicles all over town on vacant lots. So if you want to park a recreational vehicle on your property with your house, with a principal structure on it, then that's okay. But you can't just go buy a lot somewhere, or if you own a lot adjacent to your house, you can't park on the lot adjacent. You can consolidate your lots if you'd like and have the RV parked, but we really don't want RVs to be parked on a lot that is just a vacant lot. It has to have a principal structure or use on it. Any questions about that?
Well, this applies strictly to residential, not commercial?
This is residential, yeah. This is applying strictly to residential. That's what the code talks about, is these are parking recreational vehicles in residential areas. The third item, one RV per 5,000 square feet of lot area. Right now, the code says you can just have one RV, period. Well, if you have a 1 acre lot, what's wrong with having 2 or 3 RVs? Or if you have a 10,000 acre lot and you have enough room to park a
fleet.
A couple of RVs, that'd be 2 RVs. So I think what we tried to say is let's set a standard here of minimum lot area per RV. And I think Member Bolin suggested that at the last meeting. I think that's a good suggestion. In Chandler, there's no statement about a minimum requirement. It just says, and I looked at the Chandler code, and it says you have to have your RV parked behind the front building line. It doesn't have a limitation on the number of RVs. So we thought, well, maybe this is a good compromise, is to put multiple RVs if you have sufficient lot area to do it.
Well, some people have like a motorhome plus a camp trailer.
Correct. Or a camp trailer and a pop-up camper.
Right. That's an RV, so they can't have it.
And boats are not technically RVs and under the definition of our code, so a boat is not falling into this definition.
Yeah, but if you have a motorhome and a pop-up trailer, you can't have both of them, right?
Correct. You couldn't, if you had a 5,000 square foot lot, you could only have one of those, one or the other.
That's not right.
But if you had a 6,000 square foot lot, which is almost all of Old Town Coolidge, you would be able to have two items. It doesn't say you have to have 10,000. It only says you have to have at least 5,000 for one.
Per 5,000 square feet. So
One per 5,000 square feet of lot area, so I think you need two. You need 10,000 square foot to have two.
But you got a lot of hunters out there that, they have an RV, a motorhome, to go, on vacation with. Then you got a hunter that takes his pop-up tent up in the mountains when he goes hunting.
If you got a 5,000 square foot lot and you put a big motorhome on the rear yard, in the rear yard, because the 5,000 square foot lot is going to have a 20-foot setback that you can't park in. So you got to have to put a motorhome and a pop-up in your rear yard, and by the time you look at the building area, that leaves little room in your backyard for doing anything. If you got those kind of toys, you probably need a bigger lot, and I think that's what we're trying to do in this, is get a larger lot area to accommodate the more units. Our code right now just says one, period. No more, no questions, it's just one.
One thing I think we should address along with this, some of these people have boats that are big as RVs, and I think a boat should be considered at some point the same as an RV, because you got a great big 30-foot boat.
Yeah.
We
We
haven't, that's not been, we're not addressing that in this particular amendment. We can, but right now, the way the definition reads is boats are not considered a recreational vehicle.
But can't we add it?
Well, what size boat are you talking about? Are we talking about a pontoon that's over 20, we'd have to really kind of get into a definition of at what point, a small bass tracker that's only a 16 foot on a small trailer, low profile is.
What's a pop-up tent? Most of those boats are bigger than a pop-up tent.
Well, we can add boats to the definition if you want. We can add boats to the definition and limit the boats.
I think some consideration, because you still have the same issue if you're looking at the intent. The intent is to clean up the property and for visibility and things like that.
Well, what you're talking about now is making the code more restrictive, so you're adding boats to the definition, which is going to limit you even more.
I would think you address the other.
You have to do
I don't
it
see
all.
the difference myself.
Okay, all right, we can do that.
Okay, now what are you going to do? Are you going to grandfather these people that already have two of them?
This would not be a grandfathering issue.
So if they got more than one right now, they're going to have to get rid of one of them.
If they have a lot that's not bigger than 5,000 square feet.
It has to be 10,000 square feet.
See, right now, they're supposed to get rid of it anyway, because you're only allowed one per lot today anyway.
Yeah.
We just haven't been enforcing that rule. One is the maximum number. Now, boats don't count in the current code. So if you have an RV, a trailer, or a motorhome, and you have a boat, you still just have one RV. You don't have two under the code today.
And this is really about cleaning up the front yards, making sure they're not parked improperly so that visibility is there and we're not, I think that, yes, it sounds restrictive, but again, it's about the health and safety of the community, not just that one.
Yeah, but if you don't have 5,000 square feet, you can't have any.
Well, you could certainly rent a
Not too many
area to
lots,
go and house your boat, your boat or your RV. There's other things you can do.
This was just a suggestion for a revision that kind of begins to address how we can get beyond the limitation of one only. Personally, if you have a pop-up camper and it's behind your wall in your backyard, no one's going to see it. No one would even know it's there unless you're flying over in an airplane. And so that doesn't concern me as much.
Yeah, until you make somebody mad and they see it in their backyard, then they go tell you, then they go over there, and then you go over there and get them.
That happens today.
Yeah, with everything.
See?
So that's happening. Under our current code, that's why we're addressing this situation where we're out there trying to enforce a code, making people upset. Those that are getting upset are coming to say we need code revisions.
Yeah,
But on the other hand,
you'll get him.
that's exactly what happens. But on the other hand, there's a segment of the community that feels that we need to have some standard on this. And I'll remind everybody that no matter what we do here, the majority of your residential subdivisions in this community, the newer ones, have stringent requirements that don't even allow you to have an RV in the yard. Period. And this doesn't change that. Our code's going to be less restrictive than that. And so if someone wants to complain to me about a HOA where somebody has a RV parked in a homeowners association that has restrictions against that, those rules are enforced by the HOA, not by the city.
If we're dealing with restrictions that are 50 years old or something, large motorhomes, things like that weren't an issue back then. You didn't have the amount of RVs and
They're getting larger. There's no doubt they're bigger than they ever have been. Some of them the size of small buses, our buses. But so this is just a thought. Again, we're going to have more dialogue, and let me just kind of finish running through these, and then if we're taking no mental notes. And the other idea was to make sure that they're licensed and operable. And if you have one, you should have it licensed, and it should be operable. I see a lot of them around that are not operable and haven't been operated for years and are becoming junk in a yard, and probably should be taken to a junkyard. The other idea is they cannot be occupied, should not be occupied in a residential zoning district. We have places for RVs to be occupied, and that's in a recreational vehicle park or manufactured home subdivision, but not in a residential area as a rental use, or if a family member is there forever and occupying these, then it will produce some problems. So we propose to leave that in there, that they cannot be occupied.
Yes, sir.
I want to say I like this. I think we started this off last month with talking about the problem with RVs parking basically right up to the street, right up to the curb or over the curb. And we saw what we currently had for a code that really wasn't being followed by either the city or by the landowners. And this does give it a lot more direction. And there's no part of this I don't like. I agree that somewhere, at some point in time, we may need to discuss boats. I mean, I know of a boat sitting in a front yard, basically, on the side of a house that's been sitting there for 8 or 10 years. It's runnable, usable, tagged, all that stuff, but it's still sitting in front of the house. And that may be something we want to address in the future for the city of Coolidge, but that's not where we started here. And I'd like to get this thing done before we start a whole nother can of worms with these boats, because I'm sure we'll have a good amount of feedback from our community when we start talking about boats on top of this.
Yeah, everybody's gonna come up in, is it 20 feet
There'll
off
be a
this?
number of people, and we have pontoon boats that are 20 feet long, and we have those sitting in yards and side yards and front yards and stuff. But right now, the code doesn't address that, and we need to fix the existing code that we have to make it what we're doing, so that our enforcement people, the whole city has a uniformed look, whether it be RVs on the side of a house or behind a house. And again, I like the 5,000. I think that's a good number to say, you've got to have at least that much yard, or at least have only one at that size. But if you have 2 or 3 or 10 acres, you should be allowed to have more, as long as you don't turn it into a 500 of the darn.
Yeah, and they can't take any residential area and create a RV storage yard and make a business out of it. That's a commercial business then at that point. So
I'm in favor of sending that to council and saying, hey, let's write a new ordinance and let's redo the ordinance to fit this requirement over what we've currently got.
One thing I'd like to add is, in a lot of places where they do have these restrictions on RVs, they do have an allowance of 24 hours before you go or come back to unload or.
Oh, yeah.
So that
we
you're not,
would leave that. That's in our code too today. You can have a certain period of time where you're loading and unloading in the street in front of your house. That's reasonable. And then it's built into our current code. What's that? Perhaps a different section, right? But it is something that we allow.
Well, I think we have a good start.
I think it's a good start. I think I don't know that it's going to make everybody happy, but it is more flexible. This will allow corner side and side yards, as long as it's more than 20 feet back from that minimum required front yard setback. We're not talking about screening. I mean, if Chandler says it has to be behind a wall or a fence. We're not suggesting that here, that if you don't have a wall or a fence, that doesn't preclude you from having an RV parked in your backyard if you want. So there's no screening mandate here. I think it's a good start, and to kind of give you an idea where we go next is if you're comfortable with this and you don't have any more suggestions, we'll take this basic framework and then put it into an ordinance form and bring it back to the Planning Commission and hold a public hearing to do a zoning text amendment, and we have to advertise that in the newspaper, and I'm sure Joey will do a good job of letting people know that at the next planning commission meeting, the commission will consider an ordinance that the council then will that they will forward to the council for adoption. So it'll be in an ordinance format. Tonight was merely to continue the discussion, to get more feedback from you, to see if we're on the right track. So this is, I knew it would take a couple meetings to do this, but we're taking little baby steps here.
You're doing good for me.
Everybody else agree?
I agree.
Okay.
No.
Nope.
No. I'm sorry.
And it's the boats, or so it's the one per 5,000, that's what your concern is.
Yeah, it's the 5,000 square feet. I mean, you should be able to have an RV, whether it's a big trailer or a motorhome, and you should be able to have a pop-up tent trailer for small trips.
We then have to determine what small is, and that's going to be the problem. I think we are.
You know, a little pop-up tent trailer.
I know
10
exactly.
foot by 8 foot or something like that.
We both own
Well,
them.
we know what that means, but
Yeah,
it's up to interpretation. So if you say a small pop-up trailer, it could be, what is it typically one? 5 to,
Oh, how about a
15 feet usually, but I've seen them 30.
that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's all,
yeah? Well, how about all these little pickup trailer beds that are in back of people's houses?
That's I think those are typically motor vehicles, a camper on the back of a pickup that people drive daily. I don't think we're gonna, that's a good question. That's technically a recreational vehicle as well.
You're going to get into a can of worms, is what you're getting into.
Yeah, that,
well, I think we already have that can of worms open, right? With when, so that's why we're here now.
Yeah.
Stuff someone back in.
Yeah, I'm trying to get them back in.
I think this covers a lot of the, it's not going to make some of the people happy that are parking in their front yards, but it is going to make a uniform decision of how we want the city to look. And we don't want to drive down any street and seeing a motorhome or a trailer where the front end is hanging into the sidewalk and blocking the sidewalk of any
See,
house.
that's a whole different thing. I don't think you ought to be doing that either. But if you've got a block wall or a solid wall around the back of your fence, the back of your yard, you should be able to have anything you can have in there that somebody else can't see, except for the motorhome, it's going to be above the fence.
Well, that would be what the HOAs are saying in the subdivisions is, if we can't see it over the fence, you can put it in your backyard.
Yeah, but you got a motorhome, you can see it over the,
That's right,
now,
see.
okay, now I need a 13-foot fence.
So, no, so.
No, we
but-
can't have that.
But it's saying you can have one motorhome,
Right.
and it doesn't say,
Yeah, but then your neighbor says he got kicked out, so now you got a tent trailer in your backyard, so let's get rid of that. Even though you can't see it,
understand.
you know, you need to draw a line there somewhere. If you can't see it, except for the one RV that sticks above the fence.
yeah, and I think you're raising a good point. I mean, if you can't see it, then what harm is it causing, as HOA would typically feel, but
Become no visible.
well, then you're adding more complexity to the code. You'd have to say one RV per 5,000 square feet of lot area, except low-profile RVs that are screened behind an opaque screening wall or fence. I don't know.
And I'm looking at the situation of the HOA with two-story houses, and your neighbor looks over your fence from his two-story house and sees the backyard just full of trailers, and he doesn't like looking out his back window and seeing 4 pop-up trailers back there, or whatever, I mean, he suddenly says, I can see it. It's an eyesore to me because I am sitting up here in my second story on my balcony, which we have a number of those in town that have houses like that now is looking at a parking lot in the backyard, and I don't like the parking lot. So there becomes again another issue.
You know what I did on my balcony? I planted a big tree back there so I couldn't see the neighbor's house.
I saw that.
Neighbor complains, go give him a tree.
Yeah, really.
It's a start. And I think that we do what we can. We can't police everyone's backyard. We certainly have a standard, just like everything else. There's a standard and there's a code. And if so, if my neighbor wants to tell on me, well, then I'll take it up with you, Mr. Miller, when you bring me, no. When you bring me when you're going to cite me, and I think that that's something I deal with you. But I think that we still have to live by a standard, and we still have to be by a code, so.
It still gets back, in my opinion, to attitudes. And I think if we get people signed on to the thing that we're trying to benefit the appearance of the city, and it's going to be a little tough, but, in some cases, but I think sooner or later, people say, hey, this is starting to look good, and we appreciate this, and we'll start signing on to it.
Yeah.
It's all for the benefit of the town. It's not
Yeah, it is.
trying to
But
punish anybody.
I agree 100%. Get them out of the front yard, get them in the backyard. But once you get it in the backyard behind a block wall and nobody can see it, that's,
And then we deal with an issue at a time after that. As long as at least they're complying with the front yard. And if we have to have an issue with the backyard, well, it's a citizen to citizen, and Mr. Miller would deal with that when it comes to his desk.
What I'm going to deal with is the black and white code. So if we adopt a code like this and we have one RV per 5,000 square feet of lot area, and somebody has a motorhome and a low-profile pop-up, they're in violation of the code.
Right.
Could we change that to say, this is a question, not more than one RV per 5,000 square foot of lot? So if you have more than 5,000 square foot of lot, you could have one more RV. So at the 6,000 or 7,000, as I mentioned, you could have a second unit. But the maximum is not more than one RV per 5,000 square foot lot. As I said, there's a lot of what I call Old Town Coolidge, stuff that was built in the 50s and 60s, which has 7,000 and 8,000 square foot lots. I have a 10,000 square foot lot that I live in. But that's what that may be a possibility that might take care of, because most people that have a 5,000 square foot lot don't have room to put anything else, because they have 1,000 square foot front of their house at least. They have a 1,000 to 2,000 square foot house, so they only got, with side yard and everything, they don't have more than 1,000, to 2,000 square foot in the back. So it doesn't give them much room to put two and have any yard at all. So I don't know if that not more than is a better term or not, and you guys can look through that and get that figured.
I think in this case, we're trying to say, well, one per 5,000, so you need 10 for two, you need 15 for three. That's the idea that we had here with this. But with your suggestion, if you have to have at least 5,000 to have one, and if you have 5,001 square feet, you can have two.
And that's possible.
Or 5,050 feet, you can have three.
I'm sorry?
5,050 feet, can you have three?
I see what you're saying, yeah. That's the ramification I was trying to figure out. I don't know. But you're right.
Some communities talk about, when they talk about structures in your rear yard, they talk about maximum lot coverage of your rear yard. So you could maybe say that you can't exceed 25% of, or whatever percentage you want to come up with of your rear yard in, covered by RVs. That gets a little more complicated in terms of our calculations and trying to figure out the square foot of the RV.
What are the surrounding communities doing? What that?
The surrounding communities are written just like ours, one RV maximum. No,
Oh, maximum.
on any
Just
lot,
one
one.
maximum. So we're actually giving a little bit more.
Yeah, this is definitely more flexible than what the surrounding communities are doing.
And I think it only affects those people with these 1 acre lots or these huge lots, 10,000 plus lots, which we have a few of them in town. I wouldn't say it's majority, but it's probably less than 10%. But there are some of them in town that have nice big lots, especially over here on Main Street and this back area back in here. There's a lot of those lots are good sized, and they could easily put more than one RV on them and not have any, I guess, ugliness to whether it's crammed in and looks like it's wall to wall. Okay. I'm still okay with what it is. I don't see, I understand what he says, and I understand this concern, but this is still a huge step from where we were.
We need to get them out of the front yards. I agree, 100%.
What we might say is one RV per 5,000 square feet of lot area. Now, that's a small lot. But, your traditional single-family residential lot is a 70 by 100, which is 7,000 square feet. Maybe we could say one RV per 5,000 square feet of lot area, or 7,000 at 7,000 square foot, which is a traditional single-family lot. You can have two, 7,000 or more.
Carter Ranch is about 5,400 square feet per lot, and Heartland is about 4,700 square feet per lot on the average lot.
And those are HOAs that probably limit them anyway.
They're HOAs.
You couldn't get them in the backyard anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But every once in a while you'll have one with an RV gate, and directly in front of the RV gate will be the power console box and the telephone box sitting directly in front of the RV gate.
You can't get them there anyway.
It's ridiculous.
You can't use
get
it.
in there.
So stupid.
You gotta be able to curve it in sideways and back and around, but that's what I've seen for the last 10 years of doing real estate here.
One thing, we could say one RV per 3,500 square feet of lot, 3,500 square feet of lot.
Didn't have room on a 3,500 lot.
Well, it doesn't mean you have to have a 3,500 square foot lot. I mean, if you have a 5,000 square foot lot, it's still one. If you had a 7,000 square foot lot, it'd be two. If you had a 10,500 square foot lot, you could have three. Nobody's going to have three. You're going to get to a point where people aren't going to have them that many.
Well, I think you showed us some pictures last time that there was about 3 on
Yeah,
one
there were,
lot.
That was a vacant lot.
Yeah.
No house.
that was a,
No,
yeah.
it was a house, wasn't
It
the
was
one
a,
with
it
the
was a,
house?
it was a house with a vacant lot there door, and there were more than, yeah. That was definitely a problem. It was a vacant lot though, and they wouldn't be able to do it unless they combined the lots. But in that case, they still wouldn't be able to do it with this limitation on how many per lot size. So what, just thinking how we might be able to come to a compromise, but it sounds like this, this would be work too, however you want to do it.
Well, reducing the per square foot, right, it would eliminate some issues, or at least if you have 7,000 square foot lot, you'd be able to have your pop-up and then what's the big one called?
But we're not
The
going to,
motorhome,
40-foot motorhome.
yeah, but.
or 2 foot
Right,
40,
right.
yeah,
That
exactly.
we're not going to make a distinction on the type you can have or can't have on your lot, so.
Yeah, but I was specific to his,
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
his situation.
Well, I don't have a pop-up, but I know there's a lot of hunters out there that, they'll have a motorhome for the easy runs, like going to the lake or something like that. But then you want to get way back out in the Tulies, you don't want to take a good motorhome way back out in Tulies, you scratch it all up, they just take a pop-up trailer. And they got one of those too.
Buff it out on Monday.
Yeah. 40 foot? Yeah, okay, a pickup's bad enough.
But do we want to see those two 40-foot
No, you don't want to.
What if
on
you
a
took-
7,000 square foot lot?
What if you make a definition of Class A, Class B or something, motorhome, and at the 5,000 square feet, not address the others?
Remember, we've got to have our enforcement people having a clear understanding from a distance of whether it is violating the code of the city, so that when our code enforcement officers drive down a street and see obvious violation, as is a car sitting or a motorhome sitting in front of a house that is definitely parked, not just being loaded, but parked, that they know without having to go measure it or think about it or determining whether it's A, B, or C, this is a violation.
Because if it's pop-up, then it's going to be behind a fence and I'm going to see it.
They're not even going to know it. The only way they know that is when they get a complaint from I'm pissed at you, John, and so I'm gonna complain because you've got something hidden in your backyard that
She
the
did.
city would say it wouldn't be. And so it's only a retaliatory thing in most cases where that stuff that's never seen gets reported. Or jealousy or envy or something of that nature. Just because somebody says, well, I'm getting in trouble for my 2 RVs, but you've got that pop-up trailer and that's an RV. And that's where the trouble comes along, and that's where the city then has to step up and make a decision, and they can't, because the code doesn't give them that flexibility.
Yeah, and by definition, again, to remind everybody, a recreational vehicle, the vehicular type portable structure without permanent foundation, which can be towed, hauled, or driven, primarily designed as a temporary living accommodation for recreational, camping, and travel use, and including but not limited to travel trailers, truck campers, camping trailers, and self-propelled motorhomes. Doesn't say anything about boats.
And boats.
Doesn't say anything about boats.
Campers.
I guess unless you can live in the boat. So I guess if you have a boat that you can live in, like with a cabin cruiser,
Boat several times.
yeah, so if you have a cabin cruiser that is designed for accommodations, then yeah, I would think you could classify that as a
A truck camper
Recreational
is one
vehicle.
of those things that's placed on the back
slides
of
in the back of the
truck.
bed of a truck. So that would be a recreational vehicle if it were on the back of the truck.
If it were not.
If it were on the back of the truck, it would still be a recreational vehicle, much like a Class C motorhome. It wouldn't be a whole lot different than a Class C motorhome, which is a van with the camper all integrated.
Yes.
It wouldn't be a whole lot different than that if you had a truck with a camper on the back. The only difference is,
You take the camper off.
then if you take the camper off, it's still a recreational
It's
vehicle.
1 per 5,000.
It's still a recreational vehicle.
You drive by
Doesn't
my
have
house,
wheels.
drive by my house, you'll see one sitting there, behind the front wall of my house.
There you go.
That's still a recreational vehicle, but your truck is no longer a recreational vehicle when the camper's off of it. It is a recreational vehicle when the camper's on it.
So technically, if I had one of those, I couldn't park it in my driveway every day because I use it as my daily.
That's correct. You'd have to park it behind the 20-foot setback line, a truck camper.
That's gonna
Well, I
piss
just see a
off
lot of
people
campers
off.
out there. Yeah, I
But
see
those,
a lot of trucks
but
with
those,
campers.
when you think about it, those are equally as large or larger than the Class C motorhomes.
Are you talking about a shell camper too? Is that an RV? Is that what it says
Yeah.
in there?
A truck camper, it
That's what I'm
says.
talking about, the truck camper.
It's not living quarters.
It's a,
No plumbing.
oh, I disagree. No, a shell camper is not an RV. A shell,
That's right.
but one designed for a living, like with a shower and a toilet and stoves and refrigerators. There are truck
Oh,
campers
I
that.
didn't know, okay. I was,
Yeah,
I
like if you got a
was
little
talking about
camper shell on the
shell,
back of your
I
truck,
guess.
that's not an RV.
Okay. Got it.
It's the weatherproofing for the bed of the truck, but it's not an RV. Even though I've slept in many of them for years. It doesn't have a bathroom, it doesn't have a cook stove.
It's not designed for living in.
It may have a bed, but that doesn't make an RV.
Got it. Well, I think that we can go around and around with this, right?
All night, I'm still staying with,
I like what we have so far. I think that we should put it in some form and opening it up now to the public and have a
let's
discussion.
on it next month.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's exactly right.
This whole room's gonna be full.
Well, I hope so. We need some more participation, absolutely.
Joey, make sure that gets in the paper. Oh,
Please.
Okay, we'll go ahead and put this into an ordinance format and bring it back next month for your consideration and public input. And then it'll go to council from there for additional public input potentially, so.
Super.
But like you said, it's a step in the right direction, provides more clarity, a little more flexibility. Okay,
I think so.
all right.
Do you have any reports, Mr. Growth Management?
Not really. We did get a set of plans here. I would like to mention that we're processing this as a minor site plan approval, which is an administrative approval by the planning director, the growth management director. Anything that's under 15,000 square foot in terms of an addition to a building is considered a minor site plan. And so I wanted to bring it to your attention anyway tonight that we did receive plans for Cavett. Cavett Phase 6 addition. What they're talking about doing is adding a kind of a common area community room to the existing community room. If you've been out there at some of the chamber functions, this enlarges that community room there on the very northwest corner of the building. We'll be processing this administratively as a minor site plan, issuing permits for the expansion of the Cavett building, which is going to be a nice addition for the area. We did receive and permitted the McDonald's plans. They'll be probably commencing construction on that in August with a late October, November opening date, I think is what I've heard. Haven't received anything from Circle K. I did receive plans for the Napa building. They've been doing the demolition, but the plans have come in for permitting, as well as the Pinal County Federal Credit Union. So we have plans for the remodeling of the old Dimitri's restaurant for the credit union. These would be some nice additions to the boulevard. They've got landscaping proposed on each of these sites where you have no landscaping today. It's asphalt from edge of curb to edge of curb, so they're going to have some nice landscaping, really dress the boulevard up a little bit with some of these additions. Walmart has submitted plans to do a major renovation inside the Walmart, nothing in the way of expansion, but exterior and interior renovations, so we'll be processing those plans as well. That's about it, unless there's any questions you have of me.
No, I'm good. Questions? Any?
Good discussions tonight. I thought the conversation here tonight with the people, I've got their numbers and names. I will go out and I'll try to figure out what's going on with this situation out there.
I think I smelled something this morning when I got out.
I'm going to drive by there tonight.
What is the smell? Asphalt. It smells like asphalt?
You know, I'm not sure what it is. You know, it may be, I think they do a lot of seal coating this time of year, seal coat. It may be that they're creating some seal coat. I don't know what they're doing, but I'm going to go see if I smell it.
I'm sorry. Oh, you know what it's like.
Yeah.
Oh.
This stuff is nasty.
Hmm?
Yeah.
Me too.
Well, I'd like to just say that I don't want to push it on like, oh, well, you know, we annexed it and, you know, it's been grandfathered. I don't think that that's a good enough answer. I don't accept that answer at all. Yeah, it's been grandfathered in, but it doesn't mean it's right or we're doing anything about it. So if you can get some answers, I would appreciate that.
I think we have a responsibility. It is in the city limits, and we need to find out.
Absolutely do.
You know, but I don't know legally what we can really do if they were approved for this kind of process. I don't think that they're entitled to cause health issues or concerns. I think that's what air quality is there for. But if the use was permitted and they have control technology that can minimize it, then I think we need to go down that path.
There was a place up in Phoenix that we used to get our asphalt from, and they had the same problem. It was stunk real bad. They done something up there in Phoenix that appeased the neighbors, and they're fine. They don't smell anymore. I don't know what the name of the company was. I just seen it on the news.
Okay.
Is what it was.
We need to do some checking on that. We'll follow up more. I had heard rumors about this, and I heard a few people complain about it. I haven't seen any letters that they were referring to tonight, but okay.
Madam Chairman, I make a motion to adjourn.
It's fantastic. Do I have a second?
I second it.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Good night.